What is going on, Rotogrinders? Dean here at Dean 70.4 if you want to get all technical on me. That is the daily fantasy handle around the industry. It's 5:10 on the East Coast. New time for us because, we've been rushing too much as far as knocking out these slates. We're going to be here for the next hour talking tonight's NBA DFS slate. Of course, it's 2:10 on the West Coast, 4:10 Tennessee time. So, of course, it's time for the flagship show here at Rotogrinders. It's called Grinderslive. Joining me today, it is a big slate, not messing around. It's a big boy slate. 9-gamer, so we're going full 3-man booth. Batting first, leading off. You may know him from such things as what? You may know him from his tech podcast, which you found out pre-show. I didn't know him from his tech podcast. All poop related as well too. Also, you can play whoever you want. Did you have a tagline, Blender, as far as any sort of what's the tech related play whoever you want? Like what's the comp?
I don't know.
Whatever you want.
Use whatever app you want. I don't care.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, you've lived a life, man. You ran a poker room. You were the lead singer of a punk band. You've done some things, man. You've been living
anything that I could get, not to have a boss or not to have a real job. Just I'll do.
Have you ever had like an official quote unquote real job?
Yeah, when I'm between them with like 19 to 23 years old. Yeah.
Give me what was one of them? Did you have one of them
I worked in the Wall Street area. I was a web developer for financial companies.
9 to 5. Got up a pants on?
Yeah, well, the stock market opens at 9:30, so I had to be in at 8:30, an hour before the stock exchange. Because
they had computers back when you were 19.
What?
They had computers back when you were 19.
Yes. That was the year 1998. Yes.
The ColecoVision, is that what you're going with, Grant?
Wow.
Was
I have no concept of age of anyone in the DFS industry.
How old do you think I am? I'm 42.
Grant, have you ever used a typewriter?
I'm old.
Grant, have you ever used a typewriter before?
Yeah.
Okay. This is why we have 10 extra minutes, by the way. This is important stuff. We got to stay on the rails. It's a 9-game slate. What up, chat? Thanks for joining us early. Do like, do subscribe, do turn on notifications, fire off your questions. Devin will be compiling those questions, and I will fire them off. End of the show, last 10 minutes, give or take, in relation to the slate. Give us the details as far as is it for a cash game? Is it for a tournament? Is it Yahoo? Is it DK? All that good stuff to help us answer the questions. 9-game slate, Grant. I didn't give you a proper introduction. You just sort of chimed in and said hello. You guys know Grant Neefer, of course, from Parts Unknown. Who knows where he's at? Every single day he's in a different location. Grant, how are things in your world? What are your thoughts as far as tonight's 9-gamer? It's really interesting because there's some tight. That was like a Breaking Bad reference there in my head. A tight salary cap is what I was going with on DK.
Toy like a toiga?
Say it again?
Toy like a toiga?
I don't know what that, yeah.
That's an Austin Powers reference.
Is it?
Yeah.
Gold member. The third one? I haven't seen the third one, I don't think.
No, really? It's fantastic.
It's not. I mean,
they're all...
Is that the fat bastard one or is that 2?
I think he's in multiple of them.
Yeah, fair enough.
I believe he's a sumo wrestler in.
Yeah, he's like a Scotsman as well too at one point. Yeah, that Mike Myers is versatile. What are your thoughts as far as tonight's slate, Grant? Because again, Andre Drummond, we'll talk about as far as the body parts, as far as who's in and who's out. Drummond's just going to be jumping off the page, and it's really hard not to play him. You can make some arguments, I suppose, if something goofy happens, but I presume he will be the highest projected owned player tonight for good reason. The absence of Joel Embiid not playing basketball this evening. Otherwise, there's some other guys that some decent prices, but for the most part, it's like the cap is pretty tight, is what I'm getting at.
I mean, yeah, it's decently. Like I like it was weird doing CDRs today. It's like, oh, I'm really not excited about anything.
Yeah.
What's going on here? Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting little slight day. I think the Morant news will play a role, obviously. Brogdon will play a little bit of a role.
Sure.
There's a few guys that can drastically change things, and I assume we'll get Brogdon Levert news prior to lock. But yeah, overall, like, you're just kind of looking for the mispricings, and then, like, honestly, anytime there is a slate where pricing is really, really accurate, then you're just going mostly for upside and low ownership. I mean, I think there is some interesting spots to go with today. I'm waiting to see where ownership ends up lining up for a lot of different guys, but it could be a good one. Just go off the board and just correlate your lineups.
So I'll run down the body parts in a second. I want to bring Blender in, but like,
oh, great. That's why the show's 10 minutes longer.
Yeah, well, there's some out there. There's some, you just kind of referenced it. You kind of mentioned them as well. Some of them we're monitoring and give some clarity to the people out there and how it might change things. Andre Drummond right now, or ownership on DK specific, and I'm sure it's going to be this way across all sites, is currently 68.9% projected.
Whoever's watching this that controls ownership, bump that up 0.1%.
Yeah.
Like, that's a huge missed opportunity right now.
No sense of humor at the RG team. They're all about the statistics. Yeah, so, you know, it's a completely insane number, but it's fully justified. And then after that, it's Triple J at the, 25%. He's actually got a pretty good price. He's been, by his standards, not been spectacular. Just got to make some shots, obviously. And his teammate Bane as well, too. Got a pretty cheap price, but, it drops quickly is kind of the point I'm making. Blender, this is my first basketball show with you this season. What is your general basketball approach, and how are you going to apply that approach to tonight? And I'm curious what your thoughts as far as Drummond is, because, there's good chalk and there's bad chalk, and Drummond looks like just delicious chalk.
Well, I don't do many NBA shows because my process for NBA is purely mathematical. So all I'm doing is running lineups and seeing, can I get the highest projected lineups with the less amount of ownership? But in looking through, like, Drummond, for instance, we have him right now at 30 minutes, a median projection of 39.89. The floor ceiling combination is the one standard deviation range is 24 to 64, which gives him a salary adjusted plus minus value of almost 15 points, which means for a $4,400 player, to make some type of worthwhile value on his salary, it should be more like 25 points. And Drummond's median is nearly 40. In those situations, I ran lineups before. You cannot build a Drummond lineup that does not sacrifice 12 points in median projection. At that level, he essentially becomes, I'm not the type of person that says lock button.
Yeah.
And I'm not playing 150 lineups tonight because I have the NFL show after this. So late swap is I can't do. Drummond at 69% ownership is underowned. Like, Drummond's efficient ownership tonight is probably 95%. So unless you think that he's not going to be over 95%, he probably should be in you take the $4,400 center and you're playing 7v7s. He's going to be in my cash lineup, obviously. But if I were to play tournaments tonight, there's no way not to play him without sacrificing so much projection, and you're just not getting the requisite ownership for that projection. So to me, he's the easiest play on the entire. Like, you're locking them in, and then you're building your lineups around that. And I assume if you go through results DB tomorrow, you're probably going to see all the sharp players, like, with either 100% or nearly 100% on.
On FanDuel, we have it 69% as well, too. Actually, Grant, they have 69.1%. So they still have a sense of humor.
Wow, really, really messing with my heart.
It is interesting because he has 5.4 up there, which, again, still a great price, but it's like a little bit more expensive. And, on DK, you can pair Drummond with a guy like Jokic. You can't do that on FanDuel. FanDuel, there is multi-positional ability, but Jokic is just center only. And if Jokic, so like, here's a path, like if Jokic puts up 65 or 70 or 75, which we've seen before, and Drummond puts up like 38 or 40, like, Blender, is that an opportunity? Like, I'm just trying to think of a way where even if he does well on FanDuel, you still
You're still sacrificing too much.
Well,
On FanDuel,
like, but yeah, on FanDuel.
yeah, but look on FanDuel, it obviously he's a little bit more. He's a 5,400. He's center only.
Yeah.
His salary adjusted plus minus in our projections is 11.43. The next one is Tobias Harris is 7,400. Tobias Harris is much more of a play on FanDuel than on DraftKings. He's 9,100. But Tobias Harris, who is going to be chalk at like 56% ownership, Mo Bamba at 48% ownership, Damian Lillard at 47% ownership. These guys have salary adjusted plus minuses in the threes. And typically in the threes, that's what makes them chalk. Like that's what makes them, because they project 3 points better than the salary expects them to be. So when you're 11.43, FanDuel, if I'm playing 150 lineups, I'm locking them in. I'm doing the next best lineup that doesn't have Drummond in it on FanDuel probably sacrifices at least 9.5 points of projection. And it's a 9-game slate. Like just lock him in and just build. You could build around it as many times as you want. If he fails, he fails. He's going to fail in God knows how many lineups, but he's going to smash. He's going to be necessary for that price too often for you not to play.
I'm just making the point that even if he doesn't quote unquote fail, he puts up like 35, which is not failing at 5.4K.
Yeah, but where are you going to get 5,400? Get many points in
a
another
9-game
spot?
slate. It's a 9-game slate. There's plenty of other guys that are going to far surpass their projection. You know that. And again, if this is the presumption that Jokic, maybe Pearl puts up like a 50-point game, guys that are center only. I'm just trying to see the other side of it. This is weird because we're flipping it. Normally, I'm the guy that just says you have to lock that guy in. And of course, I think Drummond's a fabulous play, but I'm just trying to think of.
Yeah, but typically, Dean, typically we're arguing when the guy is like, okay, he has a salary adjusted plus minus of 4 or 5, and he's the best player on the slate. Like, dude, Drummond's efficient price on DraftKings tonight is probably 7K or 7,500, and his efficient price on FanDuel is probably 6,800 or something. I mean, like you're not going to get that. It's such a wild inefficiency that this is one of those situations where the guy is mispriced to the point in which the ownership will never get to 95%. So you're only just gaining by playing.
It's like when Boban starts.
Yes and no, but I'm still making the point. Grant, you tell me this: the optimal lineup on FanDuel tonight. What's the percentage it has Drummond in it? And the chances is not 100%. Is kind of the point I'm making.
Yeah, but the chances are probably over 69%.
No, it's not. I don't think it's over 69%. I think it's at least 50, but I don't know if it's over 69.
Well,
yeah, but
so the optimal has
of
Drummond in it. It's over 69%. You just talked about it. The slate is very efficient in terms of pricing. So guess what? That means that if there's a guy with a drastic disparity, Drummond's floor is projected at 24 points. I mean,
yeah, if he puts up 33 and Jokic puts up 59, Jokic is probably in the optimal. Is the point I'm making.
No, Drummond's still probably in the optimal because you're going to get all the points from the high-priced point guards and shooting guards.
Oh, you're telling me there's guys that are like 5 and 6 and 7K that aren't going to get there? The guys who are stepping down from the 9K guys? Like, why does Lillard have to necessarily outscore Sexton? I don't know, White, but by 20 points or by 15 points or by 10 points? Those guys can outscore Lillard. Like, those things can happen. I'm trying to think of it's the whole lineup.
That's what I'm trying to say. It's the whole lineup. You're saying, well, if Jokic puts up 85 in the center spot, then okay. Now we can talk about it.
And Drummond puts up 35.
Well, even that, you could make up those points elsewhere. Drummond's just too cheap.
All right.
If I'm the one saying it, I'm the guy that wants to be contrarian all the time.
I know. This is why
it's NBA basket. It's NBA. When the guy has that high of a salary adjusted plus minus, you just play him and forget it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of like the what if. What is the scenario where he's not in the optimal lineup? And I think the first thing I think of
is Jokic going for 75 plus.
Yeah, and Drummond putting up like 33, or he could put up 25. Like those things, he can get in foul trouble.
It's not only that; it's also either like the mid tier crushing it.
Yes.
Or other high price guys just doing terrible. Like that those Correct. Are the two scenarios. And on the slate, it's a 9-game slate. You talked about it. Some of these guys are going to end up going off. So the chances of either Cat or Jokic going for 70 plus points, not fantastic. Definitely within the realm of possibility. But even in that case, then Drummond still has to go for less than his median outcome, which is 40. So that means that all of George, Beal, Tatum, Randall, Lillard, Trae Young, Murray, Harris, Levine, all these guys like need to fail in order for Drummond not to be in the optimal lineup, and the only
Not all
reliable
of them. No, not all of them. Enough of them, or the mid tier
to be in the optimal.
Yeah. Look, I'm really curious to see what it's going to be. And I think the chances of him not being in the optimal is 50-50. I don't know.
And you're
not trying to aim for the optimal. You're just trying to beat other people.
Yeah. All right. Just wanted to start that conversation. I think that's a big talking point as far as the slate. Body parts, we have an update.
I'm not playing on FanDuel tonight just because of the situation.
Yeah, and DK it's a little bit different because of, the two utility spots. Same thing with Yahoo as well too. You can play two centers if you want. Drummond is officially starting as we assumed. Indiana, Brogdon is ruled out with his hamstring. No surprise there. Karis LeVert will play on the with his back. Now, last time he just played the first half. That was planned. It's not like he re-aggravated anything. They're talking about boosting his minutes up to some degree. How much do you boost him up? I don't know, but I presume he plays the second half tonight to some degree. Jeremy Lamb also, yeah.
Drummond over 12.5 rebounds and over 13.5 points.
Where at?
Good play. Caesars.
You could bet that right now?
I bet it during the show.
All day that's been up there? That seems like something they would have adjusted to. I guess they didn't.
Maybe they put it at 12.5 instead of his normal 9.5, which seems like a bad line, but you have to realize a lot of people that are betting these props aren't terribly good at betting. So, I mean, you look at his rebound numbers per minute in the last 3 games, and assuming that he's going to play 28, 30 minutes, still it's right on the line. So people take the under. And I don't know why there's heavier juice on the under, but there's a scenario where he should end up with hitting both of those.
The chat's talking about how I'm out of my league arguing with Blender. It's just so weird because I feel like I'm playing the role of Blender and Blender is playing the role of me. I think we.
But Dean, we talk typically sports that are event driven where no one would have a salary adjusted plus minus of that high in football or baseball or because anything could happen. In NBA, it's not that variant that when you see something that big, you just jam it.
Yeah, you're never getting Max Scherzer at 6K in baseball. You're never.
But even if you got Max Scherzer at 6K, it would be fadeable because the variance he could pitch 5 innings and get 3 strikes. I mean, he could end up not being optimal.
If
in
Max
baseball.
Scherzer was 70%, only 70% owned at 6K on a small enough slate, I'd still play Scherzer 100%.
But at least you make more of a case. This case, you can't make it all.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm actually wondering this one.
You can strictly on FanDuel based on Jokic getting 80 points.
Or Cat. Cat's lurking too, and he's really good.
He's good, but he's probably not going to put up. He doesn't have near the ceiling of Joker.
He could put up 65, and Drummond puts up 33, and that's good enough.
I'm not sure. Again, that's relying on other pieces not putting up big games.
But there's so many other pieces to rely on. This is the 3-game slate or a 4-game slate, different conversations. This is 9.
We're not talking about like you're talking one scenario, and then you're talking about then certain you're assuming if you're trying to take down GPP and trying to beat other people, then you're assuming that all the other positions don't end up getting a massive game or at least a more than above average game. Like if you're sacrificing Jokic and this guy for Drummond and Lillard, then even if Drummond only puts up 33 points, you have to assume that Jokic and this other guy ended up putting up a similar amount to all the different combinations. Like that's why you fade Drummond is to get Jokic, assuming that he drastically beats every other high spend up that you can no longer afford to throw in your lineup along with Drummond.
All right, 9-game slate. We got to get a move on. The rest of the body parts are monitoring. Patrick Beverley's questionable with his calf. Scotty Barnes is doubtful with his thumb, which is a big one. In theory, it's a big one, but we'll talk about when we go there in Toronto, like 30 plus minutes to go around. Embiid, we mentioned, is out for rest. Kevin Love's going to be out for a bit with his health protocols. Daniel Gafford is back. He's probable this quad. There goes the Montrezl Harrell value. John Morant, question with his elbow. That's a big one as well, too. We just talked about Indiana. If you guys are just tuning in, Lamb out, Brogdon out, LeVert in. Lou Dort's not playing with his shoulder. They're tanking. Patrick Williams is out for a long time, possibly the entire season for Chicago. No one's in the well. Questionable his knee. First game on the slate. Portland at Philadelphia. We mentioned it. 220.5 is the total here. Philadelphia, 2-point favorite. We already talked about Drummond. What a fabulous play he is. DK, Tobias Harris is 9-1. Like they almost knew that there would be value on Philadelphia. And then kind of under sort of reference that great play on FanDuel on DK. Not a lock by any means by my estimation. And there's Lillard on the other side, who's a great play on FanDuel, assuming it's Lillard. And he hasn't really been Lillard so far this year. His shooting has been way down. Maybe something's wrong with him. Maybe it's a small sample size. I don't know. Just kind of something to monitor. Blender, what do you have for me as far as this game?
I mean, it's Drummond. I think Lillard's obviously more of a play on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings, but it'll be lower owned on DraftKings. So if you want to pair those up, I think if you wanted to get, obviously Harris on FanDuel is a chalk play. He's going to be he's not going to be that owned on DraftKings at 9,100. I think the fragile situation when it comes to NBA for GPP, I try to look for fragile projections, fragile situations where we're not sure what's going to happen in the power forward and backup center minutes for Philadelphia. That it's either going to go to Paul Reed or it's going to go to George Niang, depending on how they play. And it could be right down the middle. Currently, we have Niang for 22 minutes and Paul Reed for 10, but that could be flipped. So, I mean, I'm talking, these are really fringe punt plays. And I also think if they play smaller, maybe Shake Milton gets more minutes as a third guard. So if you wanted to take a shot, we have Shake Milton's median at 20 in 20 minutes with a 23% smash percentage. If we could bump Shake Milton up to 24, 26, like that's quite a possibility at single digit ownership. So if you wanted to take a shot at that and you wanted to kind of like do a 2+1 in that game, you're playing Drummond in the lineup anyway. For Drummond to hit his super ceiling, the game would be close. Like Drummond probably still gets a flame, even if there is a blowout, because he's just so cheap for the amount of minutes he's going to play. But I have no problem on DraftKings, especially where Lillard is going to be less owned, to play a lineup like Lillard plus Drummond plus Milton, or one of Niang or Paul Reed, and do something like that. Or you play Tobias Harris at 9,100 and just hope he gets there. We don't have him rated that highly on DraftKings, but kind of that's how I see that game.
I'll say that the Reed one is really, really interesting because he's still minimum 3K on DK and 3.5 on FanDuel, shooting guard on FanDuel, which is just it's incredibly wrong. He's not a shooting guard. Ignore that. But 1.24 fantasy points per minute, DK fantasy points per minute, and 197 minutes played in his career the last 2 seasons. He's interesting, and it's a possibility he gets some minutes shuffled his way. You're also locking in a guy at 7:00, which there's some negative value to that depending on when news comes in and that kind of thing. There's only one late game, which is weird today. All of them are locked in, I think, at 8, and then there's like a 10:30 game or so. Grant, your thoughts as far as this game?
I mean, Blender pretty much said everything. I mean, Drummond is pretty much a lock and load. Harris is much cheaper over on FanDuel, and he's pretty much a lock over there. Over on DK, I still think that he's a decent tournament play. Still offers some upside. Look at his numbers without Embiid and Simmons on the court. He can still get you there. Like outside of that, like looking at Seth Curry's numbers on court IQ, they're not great. They are mostly bad because like he gets a 5.6% increase in usage, and yet he's getting he's getting a downgrade at like 0.1 fantasy points per minute. His true shooting percentage last year without Simmons and Embiid in the lineup was 20% lower than it was on the rest of the season. So I think like you can take pretty much any of these guys in this game and just kind of hope that some of them get there. I mean, George's 3.2K, he could see an increase in minutes by a decent amount. The guy's shooting, I already took his over of 1.5 3-pointers in this game, considering in a 15 to 20 minute sample size throughout the course of the season, he's still gotten 4 to 6 shot attempts from beyond the arc in every single game. So that's an interesting spot. Shake Milton, I could see an increase. Like we don't know exactly where the mints are going to go, but we're not projecting a ton of ownership on any of these guys in this game. So I think you can take a shot on pretty much anyone on the Philly side. On the Portland side, Dame is way cheaper over on FanDuel, so that's kind of where you play him. I still like McCollum at 8K over on DraftKings. I think that he's a solid spot. He's been shooting. He's been getting over, I think, 30% usage on the season. So he has a chance to be a fantastic piece in this spot here and a good bring back if you're playing Drummond and Harris on anything. So that's just kind of where it's at. Like all the Philly guys are technically in play. McCollum's shooting enough and Dame's cheap enough over at FanDuel, and he's shooting like 25% on the season, which is not going to continue. This is all random variance unless he is injured for some reason. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Under your favorite play on both sides of this game?
It depends on the Drummond.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah.
Done, Drummond there.
Portland, do you have a favorite play over there? You like
Lillard
Lillard
on
price on FanDuel?
Lillard on FanDuel, and Lillard for ownership reasons on DraftKings.
I think Nurkic is interesting. If they just give him a few extra minutes, he hasn't really seen it, but like in theory, you play Nurkic against Drummond. Maybe they've been giving some, run at the 5 to Nance and give him some run at the 5 to Zeller. Obviously, Nurkic has been really good, fantasy point per minute, but the minutes have not quite been there. Maybe he gets a few extra. I don't know. It's just disappointing. It's frustrating. Grant, same question.
McCollum on DraftKings, Lillard on FanDuel, Drummond on DraftKings, and probably Drummond on FanDuel.
Spurs, Pacers, 216.5 is the total. The Pacers are currently 3-point favorites. I'll throw it to you, Grant. The Spurs, is there anybody that jumps out? Let's say core play to you, or it's all secondary, if anything?
To the Pacers?
The whole game, but the Spurs. I think the Pacers are more interesting. I assume you feel the same way.
I mean, the Spurs, I think that you can play Murray, like even at this price tag. I think Pirtle's an actual good play. That's kind of it. Like if you need a little bit of price savings, Lonnie Walker, you could do worse. But
would you play Pirtle on FanDuel, because then you can't play Drummond?
Yeah, I'm talking on DK.
Okay, just want to clarify that.
Yes, I get that. I get what you're trying to do, Dean. But yeah, like it's Pirtle is mostly the guy, and then Murray, if you want to get a little bit different at the spend up, because he does have a pretty massive ceiling.
Jump in here, Blender. Your thoughts?
I think Pirtle is going to be under-owned on DraftKings because Drummond, you always have to consider where the positional slots could fit. So understand that when a guy is point guard only, he could fit into 3 spots: point guard, guard utility, and utility. If someone is point guard, shooting guard, they could fit into 4 spots. If they're shooting guard, small forward like that, they could fit into 5 spots, right? Because you get the guard utility, the forward utility, and the utility. So the hardest players to fit into your lineup are center only, because there's only one center and there's only one utility, because you don't get a center utility. So that'll naturally, because of Drummond's ownership, make Pirtle under-owned. I think a lot of builds, especially in cash games, are going to be playing Drummond and Jokic in the utility spot.
Yeah.
Which means that Pirtle is going to come in under-owned. We still have him at 16%. So it's not like he's unowned. But I think that construction, by not playing Jokic and using your other utility spot on Pirtle, I would do that. On FanDuel, Derek White is priced reasonably. I guess he's fine on DraftKings. But the Indiana side to me is the more interesting with Brogdon out. I think more people will play McConnell than Chris Duarte, and I think Duarte has a higher ceiling without Brogdon there. And obviously Sabonis is Sabonis, but I think he's priced appropriately. So I would play more of this game. I think LeVert's we have him at 22 minutes. So
that's
he's going to take some production out.
Yeah. He played 15 first half minutes the other day, didn't play the second half. And I think that's a reasonable number to put on it, but it could be 30. It could be 20. I don't know. By the way, I just want to mention, you're looking at the ownership stuff. We're going to do a refresh on that. Obviously, we currently have TJ McConnell at 0.1%. We have Duarte at 0.3%. That's going to, of course, change with Brogdon being officially ruled out. Grant, what are your thoughts as far as McConnell? He's been bad so far, like in the opportunities he's had of late. And he's normally like a stocks, assist guy. The assists have kind of sort of been there to some degree. The stocks haven't. This is a guy who had 10 steals in the game last year. Good FanDuel player, as far as their scoring system, not a great shooter necessarily, but he should play 31, 32, 33 minutes, something like that. And the price is pretty cheap, especially on TK. I like McConnell. I'm going back to it is the point I'm making, Grant. What do you think?
Yeah, so am I. I mean, he's too cheap at 4.8K over on DraftKings, probably too cheap over on FanDuel. He can absolutely get there. He's going to be playing heavy minutes. He should be up over 30. He has every single game, assuming this game stays close. Like, he's a great play. And Blender mentioned Duarte. He has a pretty massive ceiling. I mean, the shot attempts have been there pretty much all season long, and he really hasn't had a game where he's just shot lights out. He's sitting at around 45% shooting percentage on the season. I think it's actually less than that. If he has a 60% shooting game like he did the first night, then he can put up a massive outing here. He'll be heavily involved in the offense. He's not going to be terribly high owned because more people are going to go with McConnell, but he has a chance for a massive outing here. Sabonis, I'm not playing. Levert can't trust his minutes, so he's entirely out. So kind of leaves you with just a few other guys. I mean, I think you can take a shot on Miles Turner every single game. I hate doing it. It rarely ends up that great, but as always, you can take a shot on him. But Duarte and McConnell are the two guys that you want to play, and Duarte is probably the better play of the two.
He's another guy, Turner. It's kind of got the same price as Drummond. Just make the same lineup. Turner can outscore Drummond, right?
Turner is power forward eligible also, so you could play them together.
Yeah, he's also 1,500 more than.
Well, no, I think Turner's a good. I think Turner on DraftKings, any center that is going to be under owned. So if you play Turner on DraftKings, he's going to be more owned on FanDuel because he's power forward eligible. But on DraftKings, you get into the same situation that Drummond is going to be in so many lineups that all center only eligible players will be under owned for their ceilings.
What do you think about this, Blender? I mean, I know a lot of people are going to do it, but just putting 100% utility exposure for your center.
You don't have to do that. I'm just saying that.
I mean, I think
in GPPs, I'd be looking at using using utility for center. If you have two players that are similar, that are you're 50-50 on, and one's a center and one's a shooting guard, like the center are more likely to get at lower ownership than the shooting guard.
Well, Turner just $600 more on FanDuel. I was talking FanDuel specifically, Grant, because that whole conversation we're having there, different price on DK, obviously, and different situation where you can roll them both out there. But I was wrong about Turner just being center only. Blender makes a good point about that, and probably a lot of lineups are going to have both on FanDuel, both Turner and Drummond on FanDuel. It makes a ton of sense. Let's move on to game number 3. Hey, Blender, before we move on, I'm just curious your thoughts as far as this the set of games, right? 9-game slate. 3 at 7 o'clock, a few at 7:30, the rest at 8, and there's one more at 10:30. OKC at the Clippers, a presumed blowout, maybe, kind of, sort of. It's 13-point line. How do you handle that? And of course, there's the John Morant news that's lurking, and who knows when we get that at 8 o'clock versus Denver. What are your thoughts as far as approaching that? And are you a little apprehensive locking a guy in at 7 o'clock? Say we don't have Morant news that could be coming, that could open up better stuff, and you're already locked in. You understand what I'm saying? Well,
yes. The way to determine this is by thinking. We have what if projections, right? You think just logically, if Morant is out, who does it benefit? Now, it's obviously going to benefit like the whole team, but it's primarily going to benefit the guards. It's going to benefit a guy like Melton. It's going to benefit a guy like Bane, like whoever's in the backcourt. Obviously, it's going to benefit like Jaren Jackson, but more so usage-wise than minutes-wise. So for me, if Morant is ruled out after lock, it's more likely that I'm going to be using guards and small forwards, like using a Melton. So like at the similar price, for instance, do you play Duarte at 5,600 or do you play Melton at, what is he on DraftKings? I think he's around 6,000.
He's 5'7". Tyus Jones is 3'3", by the way.
Okay, so Tyus Jones may start and not really do much.
Yeah.
But let's say but still, if Tyus Jones is a play, viable, it's still going to be in the guard spots. So if I'm going to at least consider earlier players, I'm going to lean more towards late swap for the guards, but the forwards I couldn't care less about. Locking in Drummond early, what's that hurting me? If I end up with John Collins in my power forward spot, like what does that hurt me as much as I can still play Jaren Jackson in the forward utility, right? But leaving those guard spots. So I think those Indiana players that are not like maybe McConnell, like you have to weigh, do I put in Duarte? Do I put in McConnell? Because if Morant is out, I'd much rather play the Memphis guards. Like that's how I think about it. It's not like, oh, I can't lock in anyone early. It's like, well, is anything going to really change in the front court for Memphis? Not that much. So like, yeah, if I had a choice between well, it's either Collins or Triple J, and they're even currently. It's like I just get more upside by playing Triple J. But I mean, if it's more of those value plays. So like I think the perfect example is do I play Derek White on FanDuel at 7 o'clock, or do I wait for the Memphis news? Because I think Melton on FanDuel, even with Morant starting, is still projects slightly less than Derek White or Reggie Jackson, who's in a late game anyway. Like, what's the worst case scenario? You're just playing Melton for like 1.5 points lower projected. But if I sit in there and I play Derek White at 6,400 and then Morant's out, it's like now I have a slot that I'm missing out with the same similar price with the guys that I would play. So like looking at what the projection difference is and then say, what's the best case scenario? Like lean towards the late news, but in the positions that you don't have to worry about, like don't worry about it.
And also something might come up that we're not even aware of. There might be some injury that we have no clue, like just something's happening.
That would never happen in basketball.
Never once has happened. I pulled up the if then stuff. One of the tools you get here at RG. Get yourself RG Premium, $10 off the first month. We'll go ahead and drop that link in chat. $10 off for just basketball if you want just basketball, or $10 off all the sports with the exception of NASCAR, football, baseball, basketball, the college, MMA, golf, all that good stuff. This is DK specifics. Tyus Jones would jump to 24 points projected. That will be interesting. Slow-mo, Kyle Anderson, kind of a tweener, 26 and change. So like there would definitely be some potential bumps there. Like, they have some guys like Concher's lurking. You don't necessarily want to roster him. As far as the biggest bump, looks like Tyus Jones would get the biggest bump up to 52% as far as the bump will be 24 points. So he would become kind of sort of somewhat interesting. And as Blender's saying, as a tiebreaker, if you need a tiebreaker, just lock in the later guy, give yourself some swappability. Okay, game number 3 on this 9-game slate. We're talking about, this is the third game at 7:00. Cleveland at Charlotte. 220.5 is the total. Charlotte on the back end of a back-to-back. They're 5-point favorites versus Cleveland. Do you like much in this game here, Blender? As far as what excites you here?
Yeah, the only player that projects well is Sexton at 5,900 on DraftKings. For the most part, I mean, I guess on FanDuel maybe is Mobley. Mobley,
I like Mobley.
Maybe viable, but even then he doesn't. Even on FanDuel, he doesn't project well. Charlotte side does like on FanDuel, the salary adjusted plus minus, all of them are in the negative, and on DraftKings, all of them are in the negative except for Colin Sexton, who's only plus 1.34 because he's 5,900. I mean, I think he's a little underpriced for this matchup against the Hornets, but like this is a, maybe Rubio, maybe, I guess, but to me, this is one of the least appealing games on the entire slate.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I just think there's a chance Mobley plays 36, 37, 38 minutes here. The absence of Kevin Love, they're developing. He looks great so far. He doesn't make a ton of sense from a math perspective because, you have Turner in front of him, you have Bamba in front of him. You probably have Collins in front of him. But I'm going to definitely have at least one Mobley lineup because I think he's got a nice ceiling here against Charlotte. But what are your thoughts here, Grant, as far as the Charlotte side? Anything you want to add as far as Cleveland? By all means, do it. Otherwise, just talk to me about Charlotte because this is, like Blender said, I think it's one of the lesser appealing games in the slate.
Yeah, anyone on Cleveland can end up getting there, but more than likely they're all pretty much projected less than optimal value considering their price tag. Sexton's the one interesting guy over on DraftKings. He's sitting around a 30% usage rate on the season. So he does offer you a little bit of upside just considering the sheer amount of volume that he gets in every single game that he's in. So he's in play, but realistically, he's getting a ton of ownership today. So I think I'm probably going to end up staying away from him. Over on the Charlotte side, with Rozier back in there, all these prices how they should be. I'm staying away from everyone except for LaMelo just because there is going to be that game, I'm guessing, at some point where he ends up getting a good amount of minutes and he ends up with a massive outing. He's priced at 8.5 over on DK, 7.7 over on FanDuel. Definitely better play over on FanDuel, but he can end up getting there over on DK still. So I think at low ownership, he's projected around 3% right now, which seems
that game was yesterday, Grant. We missed it. We missed it. That game was yesterday. They finally.
I know he got 33 minutes, but yes, he's also gotten 30 the day before. He got 33 going up against Boston earlier. So his minutes have been in flux. Some of it has been foul trouble in multiple different games so far this season. Some of it's just because they seem to hate him. I don't know why. I get that, but he can absolutely put up a big night. And so he's in play for tournaments.
It is a third game in 4 nights too. And it's a back-to-back. So I'm a little bit worried about that, but I love LaMelo too. But like he's kind of fully priced and you're begging for 33 minutes. And I don't know if he's going to get it or not. And they have a competent backup in Ish Smith. But like we said, we got to move on. There's not really terribly exciting about this, but of course you can play ball in tournaments, not trying to besmirch. Another game that's not terribly exciting. And it's interesting because you have a pretty key piece on the Toronto side, not playing Scotty Barnes. Toronto, New York, 208.5 is a total. That is a very, very unappealing number. Toronto is a 7-point dog here. Scotty Barnes, big usage guy. Rookie's been great so far this season. not playing, or he's doubtful. I don't know if he's officially ruled out. I'm assuming he's not going to play with that thumb of his. That's what, 34 minutes getting thrown out the window. And it's weird, Blender, because, like you'd think somebody would jump up on Toronto. It's like, well, here's where all the minutes are going to go. And you talked about fluid situations. This feels like a really fluid situation because Chris Boucher could play 17 minutes, wouldn't surprise me. Could play 32 minutes, wouldn't surprise me. Maybe they reintroduce Goran Dragic, the Dragon, back in the rotation. Svi Mikhailiuk might get some extra run. Malachi Flynn, there's bodies there. Kyan Birch might play 30 minutes. He's been stealing minutes from Precious Achiuwa of late. It's a weird situation because you think there's somebody you can absolutely point to. And then we currently have Banton drawing the start. And if he draws the start, I believe he's still minimum on DK. He's kind of sort of someone interesting. I don't know what to do with it, but like you said, it's fluid and stay tuned, but there's some good darts here, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, really, this comes down to what you do with Toronto. All comes with the starting lineup. So basically, are they going to play big or are they going to play small? So if you see Barnes is out and they have Boucher starting, like you could be much more confident in his minutes. But if you see Banton starting, you can be more confident with his minutes. Maybe you see Dragic starting, right? Maybe you don't know how this rotation is going to act, but I think whoever starts is going to be the safer play, and whoever doesn't start is going to be the under-owned play. So like do one, like to me, these are the situations that I like to attack in GPPs of I want to be on whatever side of the market is the least confident. So people are going to be confident and say, I'm plugging in Boucher if he starts, and then like not play Goran Dragic off the bench. Now you may get burned by him only playing 5 minutes or him literally DNPing, right? You could do that. You can play to me this is more of a conversation. I think Boucher is a conversation on both sides. So Boucher's a 4,500 in power forward eligible on FanDuel. If he's going to start, he's absolutely playable. Banton is power forward eligible. I don't know why on FanDuel. You don't need a $3,700 like you don't need someone that cheap. But on DraftKings, if Banton starts at 3K at point guard, that's
the point guard a name, like FEV is the point guard.
That absolutely, sure. But this is the type of situation where if we got the Memphis news before the Toronto starting lineup and Morant's out, I'd much rather play Tyus Jones over a starting Delano Blanton. So that shows that Blanton starting doesn't make him this like lock and load. He's going to be dribbling the ball up to Fred VanVleet and then sitting in the corner. He may play 28 to 30 minutes and have a lot of empty, an empty stat line. So I don't see the ceiling that much there, which I mean, it takes him out of the consideration for FanDuel because I don't think you need to go that low. But on DraftKings, to me, I view if Banton starts as more of a cash game play. But if Boucher is going to get 28 plus minutes, Boucher is a 1.4 FPPM type of player. Like to me, he's the one that's like, if I see him starting, and I just hope he doesn't get into foul trouble, and I hope they just don't hate him by the second. You don't get that tweet. So Ban starts the second half, and Boucher just sits the rest of the game. But really, you can't make this decision until you see starting lineups. But if you were going to take a shot, I'd much rather take the shot. Let's say we just don't get the starting lineup, because sometimes that happens. I'd much rather take a shot on Boucher than Ban.
We have Boucher currently projected to be 11% owned, but like you said, that's kind of fluid. If he's announced as a starter, that will jump. And people love Boucher in DFS because like he's definitely had those nights where he put up 40 burgers, 50 burgers, in previous seasons. Grant, what do you want to add to that? Feel free to add. Feel free to just pass because we're behind anyway.
I like VanVleet. I'll be quick for the rest of my summaries.
You like anybody in New York?
Not really. I mean, Randall's always worth a play in tournaments, but just you're like, there's too many bodies, too much usage, too many things, that everyone's priced accordingly. Like Randall's the only guy I see with a huge ceiling.
Just want to throw out just Gary Trent on DraftKings is 4,800. He's viable.
Yeah, it's also just a bad matchup too. I know we don't, not focusing on that. We're talking about the minutes here for Toronto, but just kind of want to mention that. And I like Mitch Rob a little bit on FanDuel, but again, I don't think I can play him because the Drummond situation. But I think Mitch Rob's a guy that can get 7 or 8 stocks. He has 40 potential, and it's a pretty good price, but he's essentially the same price as Drummond. All right, Washington, Atlanta, 223.5 is the total. Washington, they've been playing slower these days with the absence of Westbrook. They are 5-point dogs here versus Atlanta. With Harrell, with Gafford back, the entire team is basically not interesting to me. Grant, feel free to give your thoughts there. Beal, of course, you could always play him, but I don't think I'm playing one player in Washington tonight.
Yeah, I think that's probably a smart move with Gafford back. It definitely hurts Harrell and makes him not playable. Dinwiddie, Kuzma are both fine, but they're pretty much priced up where they should be. Kuzma has been getting a ton of boards, but realistically at 7.3, you're not getting a ton of upside there. Beal, always interesting as a spend up, has been getting a ton of use, but with Gafford back, that might hurt it a little bit. And in any case, he's 10K, and there's a lot of other good spend ups on the slate.
Same question, Blender. Thoughts as far as Washington, and how about Atlanta?
I think even stacking Atlanta is viable. On FanDuel, Clint Capella is a little too cheap on FanDuel, but you're not playing him in the center spot. I think he's too expensive on DraftKings at 7,400. But I think Collins and Young are perfectly viable. I think Collins is a better play on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings, but Collins is still. I power forward. I think you're playing Collins or Triple J when we get up to him. I think Trae Young is a solid floor play. I'd rather play other guards at his price for the ceiling, just based on our projections. And then the subsidiary guys like Hunter and Bogdanovich, like I have no problem taking a shot on one of them, but I probably wouldn't play both in the same line.
They just have so many dudes, but yeah, I mean, it's possible Reddish gets hot. It's possible that Hunter gets hot, but it's hard to feel good about any of them. But like you said, for tournaments, you can fire away if you want to. Chicago is in Boston. 216 is a total. Boston is a 3-point favorite. Everybody's back for Boston, so I'm not thrilled to play anybody on Boston. Again, they can get there. The route is a little bit trickier. Blender, can you talk me into any Celtics tonight? I don't think I'm on anybody.
You can play Horford. Horford is not going to have a minutes limit. I just saw an alert. Celtics will start Smart, Brown, Tatum, Horford, and Robert Williams. I think Horford on DraftKings is much better. Horford's 7,600 on FanDuel. I don't think you're playing them there. But at 6,500 PFC, which means you should still play Drummond. I think he's in the mix with with Collins, with Jaren Jackson. I think Horford's in there. I think playing Tatum, not really. On the Chicago side, since we're going through the game, I think DeRozan is viable on FanDuel at 7,600. Viable. I mean, you could play him. Yeah. And if you want to punt with Caruso on DraftKings, I think he's viable also. But like I said, Caruso exists in that range of I'd rather wait for the Memphis news if possible, because I don't think Caruso's a must play or he has a 26% smash and around even salary adjusted plus minus that if you play him, you play him. If you don't, you don't. But he's 4,100. He fills the guard spots. He's perfectly viable on today's slate.
I love that Horford does not have a minutes limit. He played 41 minutes last game. Of course, that game went double overtime, I believe. He did not combust, and he's been phenomenal so far this year. He's had a renaissance earlier in the season in Boston, so he's been spectacular. I'll give you that, and the DK price is still pretty good. Grant, thoughts as far as this game?
Horford's too cheap on DraftKings. You can fade the rest.
All right, Denver, Memphis. We're in limbo, like we kind of referenced this already. 213 is the total. Denver is a 1-point dog, so it's tight, but the total is not very high, obviously. John Morant, still questionable. We've not seen any news on that. We talked about it earlier, how him being out. Well, we don't really know who's going to start. We can speculate. It could be slow-mo Kyle Anderson. It could be Tyus Jones. Maybe it could be John Concher. I'm not really sure, but there will be some bumps to go around for sure. We've referenced Triple J a couple times as well. His price on DK is just too cheap for his skill set, and there's not a lot of cheap guys we can say that about. He's just been shooting poorly. I suspect it's going to come soon enough. Why can't it come tonight? And then Jokic on the other side, if you can open up all salary and all that kind of stuff, with plenty of cheapies going to land, especially if the dominoes fall the right way, you're going to find some salary for Jokic as well. Just an absolute monster, 1.7-ish fantasy point per minute. And, Steven Adams, he ain't going to be slowing him down. He's not even playing a lot, Steven Adams. They've been going smaller. I'm curious to see how they run with Adams versus Jokic, or they just kind of go small, or they run out Tillman or something like that. Jump in here, Blender. How are you handling this game?
I think on DraftKings, this game is much more appealing on DraftKings than it is on FanDuel. So DraftKings, obviously, Jokic, top play. Jaren Jackson's a little too cheap. but obviously he get into foul trouble. Bain is viable at 5,300. I think Michael Porter is, you could take an upside shot on him. If you're not going to play Jokic in a lineup and you're going to play like Jaren Jackson, I think playing Michael Porter on the other side and playing like a 1-1 kind of little game stack there. On FanDuel, I think that the prices are a little, obviously Jokic, you're playing Drummond in the center spot. Michael Porter's okay. I think Bain and Melton are a little too expensive on FanDuel. They're become much better plays if Morant wasn't playing. And Jaren Jackson is okay on FanDuel at 6,300. He's in that mix of 6K power forwards that you're more likely to play Jaren Jackson if Boucher doesn't start and he's not taking up one of those power forward spots. But you're choosing, if they do, if you have Boucher in the power forward spot, essentially you're trying to choose between like Jaren Jackson, John Collins, and Miles Turner for your other power forward spot. And if Boucher's not in, then you're picking 2 out of those 3. So he's in the mix on FanDuel, but I think he's much better priced on DraftKings, and you have more spots to be able to fill him in.
Grant?
Jokic just won the top plays on the slate. I absolutely love him today. MPJ, very solid tournament play. His minutes have kind of been a little bit weird, and his usage has been weird. Like, he hasn't shot well, but like if he would have shot well this season, he would have been putting up a lot more points. He's far too cheap over on DraftKings, probably too cheap over on FanDuel. Everything else kind of depends on Morant. I think I like Bain regardless. I will definitely play Bain regardless. But if Morant's out, then big boost for Bain and big boost for pretty much everyone, and everyone is in play. If you want to know exactly what I think, pretty similar to what the If Then says in our premium section, except for Adams, I don't think he'll get that much of a boost if Morant's out, although there is always the possibility that they end up just going big here.
They've kicked him out the court, I think, 3 games in a row. I'm curious, but like, you'd think they would want his size, they would want his girth against Jokic, but who knows? Tillman's kind of a big boy as well, too. We got to move on. Or I'll just say this, by the way, if there's a showdown slate just this one game, Bones Highland could be the guy that kind of unlocks it. I can't imagine playing him on this 9-gamer unless we get news like he's starting or something like that, but he's the guy that might open up your showdown stuff. Orlando, Minnesota, 216 is the total. Minnesota is a 9-point favorite against the Magic. The Magic have been the worst team in all basketball when it comes to defensive efficiency so far in the season. And Minnesota also has Patrick Beverley, who is questionable. I like some of the pieces here, Grant. I don't know how much I'm forcing him in. I like Edwards. I like Russell, especially under the presumption that Beverley's out. We talked about Cat, how he's awesome, but I don't know how you play him on FanDuel. I guess you can. You get like a 5v5, a totally different build off of Drummond. What are your thoughts as far as Minnesota? Then jump over to Orlando.
Cat, Edwards, Russell are all very much in play for tournaments. They all have a pretty decent ceiling. I think my favorite of those would be Edwards because of the position and because of the price tag. Mo Bamba on the other side is a pretty decent play. He can always end up getting there, and he has a massive ceiling almost every time he goes out on the floor. 7.1 is a little expensive, but he's fine. I think Suggs is an interesting little tournament play. He's 5.3K. The volume has absolutely been there all season long, and he's just been terrible at shooting, which has lost me a ton of money in sports betting, but I'm going to keep betting it no matter what. I just don't care. I like the over on his points. I like the over on his 3-pointers every single night, and at some point he's going to shoot more than 25-30% from the floor. It's just going to happen. So the fact that the volume is there makes him in play for tournaments every single night, especially getting some ancillary stats every single time. Outside of that, there's not really a ton to love. Cole Anthony's priced up enough where I think he's a little bit out of play, although in game stack you can do worse there. Ross not playing him. Beasley I think is an interesting salary saver. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this game. It's Edwards, it's Towns, it's Russell in tournaments, specifically with Edwards. And then over on the Orlando side, Bamba and Suggs are very good tournament plays.
Bamba is a really strong play on FanDuel. His price is not fully adjusted, and he's a stocks guy as well too, where you get more points over there. He's potentially cash, like what just sort of works out for you. I'm okay with that. Blender, what do you want to add?
I like the Magic on DraftKings from an ownership versus position scarcity. Bamba's only center eligible on DraftKings, and just like I said, he's at the same price as Pirtle, right? We still have Miles Turner, like that second center, especially with Jokic being played in the utility spot and Drummond only center eligible. Mo Bamba on DraftKings fits into that mold of a high ceiling 7K center that is going to be less owned than he should be because everyone's playing Drummond. Wendell Carter, he's power forward center eligible on DraftKings. I think he's going to get lost in the mix of all the other like 6K level power forwards that you can play, especially Boucher. If Boucher's in, Wendell Carter's ownership goes down. So if Boucher is in, I'm more likely to play Wendell Carter. I think Minnesota spreads the ball around enough that the pricing on them on DraftKings is efficient. If I were to take a shot, I think I take a shot on like a Malik Beasley or a Jaden McDaniels, like a cheap piece, and then hope that Towns and Russell just don't have ceiling games. So if I do that, but I mean, anyone could have a ceiling, and like Karl Anthony Towns is especially, I mean, on FanDuel, he won't be owned at all, but on DraftKings, I think Jokic is going to be higher owned. So if you do play a Jalen Suggs or a Cole Anthony in GPP, it makes more sense to play Karl Anthony Towns in that lineup than Jokic.
Scotty Barnes officially ruled out. Just want to say, when you say Boucher in, he's available no matter what. He's not ruled out, but you mean starting? Just
starting, yes.
Yeah, just in case somebody's just a little confused by that. 210 is the total as far as OKC versus the Clippers. Not exactly a hammer game. This is what we have at 10:30. Clippers are 13-point favorites. No Lou Dort. Let's be quick on this one, Grant, because I want to save like 4 or 5 minutes for the people as far as the chat's questions we've compiled. Like on DK, the way that this could change, but right now, like Batum and Kennard look like they can be kind of sort of somewhat like plug guys, sort of make stuff work. Paul George, of course, has a ceiling game, and you kind of need OKC to stick with him. So maybe you run him with SGA in a tournament. Giddey's got a pretty good price too, but it's just hard to predict these rotations on OKC. They're not necessarily trying to win. Yeah, what do you have for me, Grant?
SGA, I think, is a decent tournament play, assuming this game stays close and you bring it back with a guy like Reggie Jackson or Paul George on the other side. Paul George is a little bit expensive. I don't know if I'll end up going with him. It's just an interesting little spot and a potential blowout where he does have a massive ceiling just because of the sheer volume he's shooting. So you're assuming it's going to stay close. My bringbacks on OKC are SGA, like I said, and then Giddey is a little bit interesting at his price tag. But outside of that, not really a ton I love over on OKC. Jackson stands out as a little bit underpriced considering the massive amount of usage he's got. So far this season, he hasn't shot well. He's going to start shooting well at some point. Just the sheer volume that he's getting without Kawhi being in there is enough to make him very interesting in tournaments.
Anything to add to there, Blender?
Did we mention that Lou Dort is out?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so who's going to start for him? Is it going to be Kenrich Williams?
Maybe he's interesting on DK if he starts. He's like 3-3, right?
Right. I mean, he's viable at 4K in FanDuel, but I just don't think you're ever going to get them. By the time you get the starting lines for that game, you'll probably have your slots filled out. So like, I don't consider Kenrich Williams to be like, I got to wait for that news type of thing. I'm much more interested in GPPs for guys like Giddey and SGA rather than that. And I think on the Clippers side, I still think Reggie Jackson is a little too underpriced. I think he's a better play on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings because he's cheaper on FanDuel. So he's viable, but like, I think this is a very good GPP game if the game is close.
Yeah.
Right. So if the game ends up being close, especially with it being the late game, and so many people, some people may have McConnell in their lineups already. And if the Memphis news comes out, some people may have Tyus Jones or something. Like this game may end up going under owned because people are just picking up other pieces and playing a lineup with like Reggie Jackson and Luke Kennard and SGA and Giddey. Like you could stack like 4 or 5 guys in this game and hope it stays close and goes over. I mean, on a 9-game slate, I'm not a big fan of playing that many players in one lineup, but I think instead of thinking this is going to be a blowout, like play it as if it's not.
All right. Lightning round. We got to go. Grant, you're going first. Blender, you're going second. We're going to bounce back and forth. Grant, your favorite GPP single entry team stack?
Probably Philly.
Yeah, I don't know if you have to. Yeah, like I understand what they're trying to do there, but like there's not necessarily one. Like yesterday is Milwaukee. That was a different slate though. Blender, GPP. You got Oubre or Duarte? It's got to be Duarte, right?
Well, I mean, all I'll do is this DraftKings?
This is FanDuel. I apologize.
Oh, this is FanDuel. Now I'm going to go over to FanDuel. If we're going to have 1v1 questions, we're going to have a little teaching moment.
Oh boy.
Oubre is 5,500.
The answer is Duarte. Go to the next one.
The answer is Duarte.
Right. So why are we doing these questions?
We don't have time for
What if they don't have premium? This is a free show. Just answer the questions.
Right, whoever's projected higher, Duarte.
Grant, single entry, Murray, Young, Ball, or Lillard. Pick one. Murray, Young, Ball, or Lillard.
Depends on the site. Young, I think, over on FanDuel where he's cheaper. Ball over on DK where he's going to be drastically lower on.
Grant, do you have any super draft plays for the people?
Oh, look.
I'll
I
give
haven't
you a
even
second.
gotten to them yet today.
Blender, if it blows out in the Clippers game, do you prefer Kennard or Man? I assume that's Man if you're going to play one. If you're forcing yourself to play one, I guess it's man, right?
No, Kennard. I'd rather play Kennard. Kennard is 25 point projected, and man is they're 23. Oh, it's almost a coin flip. So flip a coin.
Okay. Cash core considerations. Andre Drummond, like you're supposed to play Andre Drummond. On FanDuel, you're also supposed to play Tobias Harris. On DK, I don't know if there's a second, probably Triple J. Boucher if he's starting. There you go. I talked about Bombo potentially on FanDuel as well, as far as cash game core plays. Running some more down. Thoughts on Gary Trent, Grant? Like, why? What am I missing with Gary Trent? Well, he's already playing a bunch of minutes, and the matchup's not necessarily great. He's fine, but I don't think he's jumping off the page. So he's okay.
Yeah, you can play him, but I'm probably not. Like, why?
You got any super draft plays?
Drummond, absolute lock. Same thing as everything else. Bamba, if you're going to pivot off of Drummond, is probably the only guy that you can probably do it. Again, it's on multipliers there, so it's a little bit different of a situation. Jackson, far too high of a multiplier. Van Vliet, far too high of a multiplier. OG, still very good play with a pretty decent ceiling. That's it. There's some.
Blender, are you considering Jetty Osman for tournaments, GPPs on DK?
No, he wouldn't even be on my radar. No.
Grant, DK tournament. If you play Horford, would you still play Jackson? You can play both if you want to. Would you play them both together?
Yeah.
Grant, Oubre versus Suggs.
Suggs, not even close.
Bamba versus Collins. I want to give it to Blender just to rile him up. All right, Bamba. You got Bamba or do you have Collins? What's your expert opinion here, Blender?
It depends on the site. On FanDuel, it would be Bamba. On DraftKings, it would be Collins.
Is that based upon the project? Check the projection.
That's based on the project, but they're very close. So like for GPPs, depending on ownership, like you could on, I think it's more, I think Collins leads Bamba on DraftKings, but they may be an ownership difference of like 3x. So like play the lower owned guy when the projection is only 2-point difference.
Grant, Powell's kind of cheap on DK. DK tournaments, if you're running back a Portland Philadelphia game, he did come back from injury. I believe he played 31 minutes or so. So it's not like I assume he's fine. Do you like Powell at 30?
No.
Is that yes or no?
No.
All right. What am I missing playing Turner? Well, why do we like Turner today? Who wants to answer that one?
Miles Turner?
Sure.
Because he always has huge upside.
Yeah, he's a volatile player, but like he has those peak games for sure. Final thoughts here as far as tournament thoughts on Anthony Edwards. What do you have for me, Blender?
Sure. I prefer him in lineups that you're playing Magic.
As a run back, basically.
Right. So you're playing Edwards for a ceiling, and then because I think the Magic are more competitively priced. So if you're playing Edwards, I think you play a Magic player.
One more, Grant, before we step aside and get out of here. It's a 2v2. This is for cash. Bane and FVV. This is on Yahoo. Bane and FVV or OG Anunoby and White.
Probably Bane and FVV.
We got to step aside and get out of here. Blender's going to be back later doing the showdown slate, talking some football.
It will be back later.
Myself and Grant will be. I was getting to that. Myself and Grant will be after that, watching the game. That's when we can actually answer some of these questions too. We're sticking around for 3.5 hours, watching the NFL game. We talk gambling, we talk live betting, all that good stuff. Tune in for Grind the Line. Check out Blender on the showdown slate content, which is 45 minutes or so before lock for football. And if you guys are premium members, you guys know that knocking on the door right now is crunch time. One Andy Means. Check that guys out. Oh, Devin's saying knock because he's got to go. He's going to cut us off any second. We ran a few minutes late. My apologies. Thanks for everybody participating in chat. Do subscribe to our notifications. Stay tuned for crunch time. If you guys are premium members, that was Grant. That was Devin producing. That was Blender. That was Basketball. That was Dean. We're out of here. Holler. Peace.